So I'm sitting across from the chief financial officer of a major organization, and he's going on about the next director he plans to fire. I tune him out pretty quickly as I start doing the math in my head. Let's see, that's 3 directors in as many weeks, and across his entire organization, wait, yep, that's it. His entire organization has now turned over 3 times in 2 years. Everyone in his department has either left or been fired by him because he's got this really bad habit of hiring people, working them to the bone, burning them out, and then firing them less than a year after he hired them. As the chief information officer for the organization, it's my unfortunate responsibility to support his behaviors. And it's really been bothering me. In fact, it's gotten so bad at this point that I have a playlist of songs on my iPad to listen to psych me up and get me energized for the day. So on this particular occasion, I stop and I think to myself, what is leadership? Because what this guy is doing is not leadership. Leaving a wake of bodies in your path is not leadership. Yet he's a chief financial officer of a major organization. So I do. I start reading everything I can find on leadership. I pick up every book, I read every website. I just consume vast amounts of information about leadership. And then one day I come across this term called servant leadership. And it's like a choir of angels sang to me. Okay, maybe there was no choir of angels, but I did recognize a calling at that point. You see, I recognize that servant leadership is authentic leadership. The only reason we need the term servant is because too many people today have confused leadership as an achievement to be reached rather than a commitment to serve. So why weren't more people aware of this? And that I recognized was my calling. So I started a blog on it. I wrote a book about it. I converted that book into digital format, into audio format. I started Twitter accounts, YouTube channels. I did everything I could to get the word out about servant leadership. And then it occurred to me, this concept of servant leadership and the tools that I'm using are perfectly matched. In fact, digital media that everybody was talking about as a marketing tool, a self-promotion tool, a sales tool, grow your net worth tool, they were actually leadership tools, but nobody was talking about them that way. You see, leadership is not easy at all, but digital media today makes leadership easier than ever before. Leadership is not easy, but digital media makes it easier than ever before. Here's why I think that. The first real occurrence of leadership is back in the nomadic era, right? We have basically caveman era, where leadership is largely one way. Small groups. Whoever has the biggest club is the leader. He says you do. He hits you over the head if you don't, and that's essentially what leadership is. Very small groups, maybe a dozen or so people, family units, tribes, and one way. Then we hit the agricultural era, where we started as human beings to bring our food to us. We start to have communities, towns, villages, and leadership structures start to emerge. As a result, a leader is able to send a message out into the community through a leadership structure and reach probably several hundred people at this point. The Apostle Paul lived at this time. Oh, you may know him as Saul, by the way. The Apostle Paul lived during this time, and he realized that digital media that he didn't have, the closest thing he did have was writing letters. So he used what he had available, and he wrote letters, and thank God he did. Lots and lots of letters. He did the best he could to overcome that challenge, that leadership was still largely one way. There was no way to get communication back from the community. Not as a whole. You could still get community feedback by small groups, you could get messages delivered, but the feedback you got was largely subjective, and it was largely interpreted by the individual delivering the message. Next, we hit the printing press, and we make a massive advancement in leadership communications in that the breadth of the reach of the leader grows exponentially. A leader can now reach thousands and thousands of people with exactly the wording they seek to deliver. They write it down, it's printed out, and it goes out into the community. You can reach a large audience for the first time. But it's still one way. Getting that feedback from everybody that you're reaching with your message is nearly impossible. You're going to get subjective feedback interpreted by the messenger. Your communications as a leader are still one way. Then we hit the broadcast era, TV and radio. With TV and radio, you can reach thousands, even millions of people in new formats, much more quickly than ever before, but still one way. You see, the problem here is we've developed polls and surveys, but everything you get is still only an observation of a small group of leaders or a small group of the community. You're not really getting feedback from everybody you're reaching with your message. Until now. Now we have digital media, and in the digital media era, we have the first opportunity to get feedback from the entire organization you were trying to reach. Oh, sure, you might not be getting one-on-one conversations with thousands or millions of people, but you can have a one-on-one conversation with one person that is rated, ranked, liked, +1, all the feedback you can think of by the entire organization that wants to be a part of that message. Anyone in this room can send a message out to the world and get feedback from everybody who's interested in that message. And oh, by the way, you can do it completely for free. Leadership is not easy, but digital media makes it easier than ever before. You know, there's a big question probably still hanging in your minds, though, about why should we care, right? So we have this tool, leaders are out there, they can use it, but why should we care about it? Let's take a look at the people who understand this concept. Whether or not they're leaders, certainly whether or not they are servant leaders, there are people out there who are using this opportunity. Up to about 10,000 followers in digital media, we have this group. And again, this is a selective group, obviously, but we have the Apostle Paul I mentioned earlier, right? If he were alive today using digital media to reach about the same number of people he was doing very effectively given the time to reach with his letters, he'd be up to about 10,000 followers at this time. Our own servant leader, President Knapp, who you heard speak earlier, he's up to about 10,000 followers in digital media, and the Reformed Church of America in that same category. Pretty good group. 100,000, our very own Hope College, up to about 100,000 followers. Way to go, Hope. Does anybody recognize the other one up there, though? That's ISIS Media Network. Now, if you're not aware, ISIS is very effective at using social media. They use it both to attract new followers and to scare off organizations as they advance into new territories. ISIS is incredibly effective at social media. They're influencing our communities. Our global communities are being influenced by up to about 100,000 followers right now by ISIS. 1 million. Trinity Broadcasting Network, the largest Christian broadcasting network in the world, has up to about 1 million followers in digital media. Anybody recognize the other one? That's Almanar News, which is essentially Hezbollah's media news outlet. Up to about 1 million digital media followers. They also are affecting our global communities and influencing them through digital media. 20 million digital media followers. Yay, Pope! Pope's a pretty popular guy for all kinds of good reasons, but he's also probably the most effective ever at digital media, right? Now, granted, he probably has a staff helping him out, but he's using it very effectively. Somebody not quite so much like Pope, though, is Charlie Sheen. Paris Hilton. Not people I think of as great role models for the youth of today. But they're also influencing about up to 20 million of our stakeholders in our communities. Then we hit the major leagues, 75 million followers on digital media. I don't know about you guys, but I have to teach my 3-year-old not to stick his tongue out all the time, and then I gotta have Miley Cyrus on the screen all the time. Thanks, Miley. Snoop Dogg, Kim Kardashian. You decide for yourself, are these the type of people we want influencing our communities? Maybe. But if you don't, it's up to you as leaders to start influencing more effectively online. Leadership is not easy. It never will be. But digital media is an opportunity that makes it easier than ever before. Every leader that's come before you would have loved to have had this tool available to them to be more effective leaders. Before I leave today, I want to give you one more story. This is Kirsten Bond. Kirsten works with digital prosthetics, bionic prosthetics. She works with some of the most advanced technology for amputees, upper limb amputees. I asked Kirsten, I said, Kirsten, in your research, in your work with your patients, what is it that makes someone more effective at adapting the new technology, more likely to be successful with the technology? She said, without a doubt, it is someone who is excited about the power and the potential of the technology. That's interesting, Kirsten. I said, what is it that makes it more challenging? What is it that's still difficult for your patients to do, no matter how much time they spend working with the technology? And she said, well, the problem with bionic technology today is it still doesn't provide sensatory feedback. You see, a natural hand has the ability to sense something in it. They know, you know as an individual whether something is being held too tight or too loose and is going to slip through your fingers. But a bionic limb doesn't have that sensory feedback. How much is that like leadership? You see, we have the power and the opportunity before us if you're excited about it. And the sensory feedback problem, we don't have that anymore. We have digital media to give us instantaneous feedback from a global audience on your message. So the next time you're on social media, think about how you are using this opportunity and this potential to leverage stakeholders in our communities and to be a more effective servant leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.